Welcome everyone to our panel discussion today, Navigate from NAV, or as it's formerly known as Microsoft Dynamics NAV or Navision, to Business Central or Microsoft Dynamics Business Central. Looking forward to introducing you shortly to two of my colleagues that both have exceptional background in the topics of NAV and Business Central, so we're in really good hands. So just a quick introduction of myself. I've been working with Professional Advantage for 14 years now, and before that still in the IT industry. And I'm just really passionate about ensuring that the technology that the customers that I work with is addressing all their business requirements and ensuring that they're going to deliver the business outcomes and increased performance over time. So just trying to give the best advice so customers can make the right decisions about what they're investing in and where they're heading. I'm joined today by Keith. Now, Keith, wave your hand, Keith. Keith has a very impressive 40 years in IT, with the last 16 of those working specifically with the Microsoft technologies that we're talking about today. He works with our customers to help them develop and execute their plans so they realise the key business outcomes. So welcome, Keith, and thanks for your time today. And Sammy has an equally impressive 35 plus years. Not sure he's giving us the true number there. Solving customers' business problems through technology. Not many people in Australia can claim to be one of the first Australians to be trained in NAV or Navision. So he's been there from the very beginning. Also a lead Microsoft certified trainer and senior consultant implementing NAV and Business Central across many different industries. So I feel like we're in really the best hands here today. And so let's get going. So just a refresher on what we're discussing today, and this is the information that was on the invitation that you would have responded and registered with. So we're going to cover off the key benefits of moving from NAV to Business Central. What's the process? What are the considerations? Because obviously there's different kinds of considerations which Keith and Sammy will work through, and how to work out ROI and associated costs. So let's get going. So Sammy, do you want to run through what is Business Central? So obviously everyone on the call today is using NAV or Navision, and they might have varying degrees of understanding of what Business Central is.
Okay, well, thanks, Rebecca, and hello to everybody. Look, Business Central is really the next iteration of that product, as we said, called Navision, NAV. It's really the next step in that life cycle. So many people don't know this, but it started its life, let's say, as PC Plus back in the mid-1980s when we had DOS machines and standalone PCs and all that in the mid-1980s. And by the late 1990s, the product was reborn as Navision Financials. And people then simply just called it Navision. And it went through various iterations of name changes and generations and different buttons, how they looked. Here's a piece of trivia for you guys. Most people don't know this, but somewhere along the line, NAV and Navision was called Attain. Microsoft Attain for a little while. I think it lasted 6 months, but the marketing people got hold of that and said, no, that ain't going to run. Anyway, but it's the next iteration. So what people know is that over and above the name changes, the concepts remain. All right. So some concepts which were in the old ones, not as much in the new ones. People were familiar with terms like the role-tailored client, or people remember terms like the RTC, or people remember things like homepage, or people remember terms like NAV client, or people remember terms like, here's one, everybody remembers this, the three-tiered client. That was a big innovation in its day. But more importantly, people who are used to the NAV words or Navision words will be familiar with the Business Central words. So we're all familiar with posting groups, hooray, the word post and what that does, and the customer card and the vendor card. People will remember terms like the item ledger entry and things like that, the vendor ledger entry. They're all still around in Business Central because that's the next iteration of NAV, but it's progressed further. For example, guys, you might remember, for those that are on the call, where do you find transfer orders? and you'd go hunting through those menus. Do you remember that? Is it part of warehousing? Is it part of inventory? Where is the transfer orders page? Well, in Business Central, you simply go up to the tell me prompt, and I mean, you don't even know, you just type in transfer, whatever, maybe transfer routes. Do you know where to find transfer routes these days? But it's this next progression, Rebecca, that's what it is. It's now become software as a service, truly software as a service. And it's become device independent. You don't have to install software anymore. Hooray! I mean, yeah, there's a Business Central app. You can get that, you can get that on your phone. Happy times. And there's a Windows app if you want. But it really has become anytime, any place, anywhere, web browser, happy times. Really is.
Oh, excellent, Sammy. Thank you. That's a great history. I don't have a NAV background, so I certainly learnt something new. But also at the same time, certainly for my age, because the design of some of those early blue and green screens looks very familiar.
They're good, aren't they?
And you just escape. So look, NAV's been around for decades, as people on the call will be familiar with, and it's clearly been delivering really robust solutions for tens of thousands of organisations around the globe. So why would an organisation actually need to change from NAV to Business Central? Maybe Keith, one for you.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction there, Rebecca. There's a couple of reasons really why you would want to go from NAV or Navision over to Business Central. And you can see there on the slide the way of migration. But the key thing is really, and it's a phrase coined from the Men in Black movie, is this is the last ERP system you ever buy. Why? Because you don't have to pay BREP anymore. And if you'd already stopped paying BREP for whatever reason, you will want to pay BREP again to reinstate your support with Microsoft. You'd move forward, you'd migrate to Business Central. And bearing in mind that NAV 2018 is no longer available and it will become end of life in 2023, you're faced with two options. What do? Do you stay where you are and not reap the benefits of new technology, or do you migrate to Business Central Online? So with BC, you don't have to consider putting in capital expenditure budget and look to do a major upgrade every 4, 5, 6, 7 years, because let's face it, most of you have most probably been through a NAV upgrade at some stage in your life. It's costly and potentially has disruptions to business. With Business Central, you're going to get 2 updates a year from Microsoft. And being on-premise, being in Microsoft Azure, then you don't even have to think about doing the upgrade. Microsoft take care of that all for you. So all you got to do is think about, looking at it as an operational expense going forward. Having said that there are 2 upgrades a year, the other benefit is you don't have to redo or re-implement your enhancements or customizations, as we used to call them. You do have to speak with your partner to validate that none of those customizations or extensions, enhancements are affected by a particular platform update. Sammy's already mentioned that NAV has evolved over the past 31, 32 years kind of thing, and as many new enhancements have actually come into the system. So currently we're on Business Central version 17, but in 2020 we've had a couple of updates. Give you an idea, there are things that will come into it like bank reconciliation, which came in around about 17.2 or 17.1 in the middle of 2020. So most of our PA clients are already on this platform, already been updated to that. Some other functionality like inventory receipts and inventory shipments for better control of stock, within your warehouse. So one of the things you've got to consider is that, and Sammy's mentioned this, Business Central is software as a service. So what does that mean? You don't have to think about replacing servers every 4, 5, or 6 years. You don't have to think about updating your server licenses or indeed your server antivirus. So what it's doing is releasing the burden of everyday maintenance from your IT department so that it can concentrate on increasing technology benefits to the business.
Hey, Keith, sorry if I can just interrupt.
Sure.
Like working with the clients that I work, data sovereignty is a critical issue for many organisations, either by law, depending on what industry they're in, or by their own policy. So it's an important question. Is the data in Australia when it's in Microsoft Azure Business Central?
Absolutely, yeah. So currently there are two commercial business Azure business centres. So one is in Sydney and the other one is in Melbourne. For anybody that's on the call that is part of a government organisation or a defence organisation, then there are three data centres that are sitting in Canberra. But the answer to your question, yep, data is 100% kept in Australia.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep. One last point about, why would you actually move? It's the integration with some of the other Microsoft products. So, for example, having Power BI running inside Business Central, or use BC as a platform and access it from maybe Teams or Outlook. So the tying together and the tight integration is something that we never had previously with an on-premise NAV solution.
Thank you. I imagine being able to use Business Central or anything really that's integrated to Outlook and Teams would be a massive productivity gain.
Absolutely.
Keith just mentioned that BC integrates with, because it's part of the Microsoft Cloud Platform, so the other Microsoft Cloud products. It would be good if we could expand on that and perhaps also include insight into integrating to other systems or other data sources. Sammy, maybe a good one for you.
Yeah, I can take that. Look, exactly right. It seems to be, I suppose, with every new version of the software, it seems that Microsoft is integrating more and more within the Microsoft family, and
which is really exciting. Yeah.
Oh, it's great because it's become easier. It really has. For example, you can access Business Central from within Outlook. Not just interface, actually interact with it from within. I live in Outlook. So being able to access Business Central and look at my data is a real game changer. I mean, Keith mentioned this before. You can access Business Central from within Teams. I mean, it means you can access your data via, I suppose, almost any channel. It's become more and more, as Keith said, a productivity platform, and much more than NAV could ever wish to be. It's just wonderful.
And of course, Teams is the other place we live in now.
Oh yeah, that's certainly true. It's become the great tool, isn't it? So another example of this sort of integration model is, guys, those of you who are using NAV or Navision, do you remember you can export to Excel? That's fine. There used to be this Excel button right at the top of the window, and you'd click it and the data would go to Excel, or you could copy or paste, or remember those who were using it, you could do paste rows to paste back into NAV, right? So Business Central has a similar thing. Sure, you can export and you can copy and you can paste, but now you can actually edit, update, and refresh Business Central from within Excel. It's a real game changer. This tight, wonderful integration between Business Central, let's say, as a productivity platform. It's no longer just an ERP system, which was a limitation of the technology of NAV. So, and the other thing is Business Central works with all of the versions and the structures of the versions of the Microsoft 365 platform. It's just become much more part of the family.
And put my hand up. What about API and web services? It's becoming commonplace as obviously more and more modern systems use common languages, and people are really wanting to head towards automated integrations using all this standard capability that's out there. What about, what's the story with Business Central around that, Sammy?
Yeah, again, that whole integration is there. So some of the old NAV versions, and maybe even the Navision versions, certainly NAV ones, had something called web services. and they were linked. You think they were linked to the data, but they were actually linked to the pages, or in those days they were called the forms. They weren't linked much more to the forms than the data. And they changed with every upgrade. So you, as support people, we had to constantly watch. We're upgrading. What links do we have? What web services do we have? Do we need to change them? But in Business Central, I don't know, there's more than about 20 different APIs. So it means outside systems can load data into Business Central. And remember, we've got Business Central has security, so we can do that in place, and they can get data out of Business Central and use standard IT protocols. It becomes I suppose, a secure and reliable connection. And Rebecca, it's a great question, because now Microsoft have this wonderful new concept called the Dataverse. I love it. It used to be called Common Data Services, but I suppose Dataverse sounds like cool. But data from different disparate systems can come together, right? Think about a customer, let's say in CRM, and a customer in Business Central, and a customer in the Power Platform. They all come together to share that data. And Business Central now has the ability to send data back and forth between this Dataverse. I used to call it the holy grail that people are after all these years, a coordinated and synchronized data across all your software. And NAV just didn't have that concept. Well, not strongly anyway. It didn't quite have that concept. And
the awesome thing about obviously coordinated and synchronized data is what we can do with that data, which is a topic for other webinars, but it enables us to use data to make excellent decisions. A lot of the business I've been working with that have adopted Business Central get almost all they need from Business Central. But if they need extra functionality, Sammy, or something that's unique and important to that particular organisation, it gives them the customer service that their customers expect, or a competitive advantage against their competitors. How flexible is Business Central, and how do customers and partners extend it when required?
Yeah. Look, I reckon it's one of the game changers. It really is. It's one of the big differentiators and advancements between NAV and Business Central. All right. So here's the big take-home message. With Business Central, your customizations upgrade with you automatically. Oh, wonderful. So when upgrades happen, your customizations, and Keith mentioned the word before, they're called extensions. When these customizations also upgrade with you. So there's no longer this major project, major assignment to do the upgrading. I'll give you an example. Back in the old days, I love the good old days. Back in the old days in NAV, your custom enhancements had to be written in a very particular way. I remember when I used to cut code, all right? And you had to be highly disciplined about how you did it. You had to keep all the code over in the side. If anybody's listening, you'll remember these words, the 50,000 series. All right, you had to cut your code in the 50,000 series and isolate your enhancements over there. And even new fields on the page, you couldn't embed new fields, or you shouldn't. You had to keep them out right down the bottom and keep them in a separate area. It was all to help identify them during the upgrade process. And then the upgrade process, draw breath. You had to have a project to identify what changes do you want, what changes don't you want, do we keep it, do we not keep it? Having done that, all right, now let's upgrade the software. Well, there was a whole process to upgrade the software. You had to get the tools from Microsoft, you had to do all that. There were many, many, many steps. And of course, you had to redo your customizations. But the BC architecture means you don't need this recoding. You don't need to rebuild your enhancements like you did with NAV. All right. So I'll give you another example. Right. We used to have this thing in NAV called add-ons, and some people called them add-ins. All right. They were like a bought package of enhancements for specific industries. So maybe you had some rental functionality and you'd have rentals, or you'd have subscription functionality or real estate functionality. You want to buy a whole package of stuff. So in those NAV days, you would flick through the PDF document called the CFMD catalog, certified for Microsoft Dynamics. You had to browse it, you had to approach the supplier, get the software formally installed. And then when you had to upgrade, well, you had to coordinate between the supplier's versions and the current or proposed NAV versions to make sure that you were coordinating properly. But with Business Central now, I mean, you just go to the App Store. Just as easy as that. You click the button and you've got software downloaded instantly, and it's inside your Business Central so that you can do an assessment and a trial. And when you install it, you got it and you buy it, it upgrades with you. It just goes seamlessly. Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, all those Microsoft productivity tools, they're integrated, built in. So you could, if you wanted to write this concept of low code or no code, you could, without technical involvement, write your own workflows if you want. I mean, they're in Business Central anyway, but you could. It's making our clients achieve more with their tech. It's really gone to the next level of empowering, I suppose, our clients even more. I love it.
We can tell, Sammy, you're always very passionate about it. People can't help smile around you. So thanks for that great information and the evolution of NAV to Business Central. Some key considerations given there to make the change. But we all know that there's always a reality to changing systems. So it'd be good if we could cover off, guys, what's involved. So if we talk through that now, Keith, maybe you can share with the audience some of the key considerations around changing from NAV to Business Central.
Yeah, absolutely, Rebecca. So I guess really there's 3 stages that we have to go through if we're talking about, moving from NAV, whatever version, to Business Central. I guess the first thing that we have to consider is examining what your business really needs, both for today and for tomorrow. So things like, have you changed your business since you first implemented NAV? Lots of organizations have. Have you still got best configuration for your business? Has it changed? Have you acquired other organizations? Have you been acquired? So that's your first part of the building block. The next stage is, working through and analyze how Business Central can meet those needs. Going from NAV with NAV is a mature product. So going from that, mature background into Business Central, a lot of the things are still the same because BC uses the same terminology. Customers, you've heard, Sammy mention it, and you've seen it on slides already. Things like, as I say, customers, vendors, posting groups, posting dates, items. You'll see the match between what you've already got, whether you're in the role tailored center or whether you're in the classic view, you'll still see the same difference between the two. And you become accustomed to that and you feel comfortable with that because nothing's really changed. But then what do we do after that? The way that we approach this is we'll build a pilot version of Business Central. And what we do there is we pull together through a questionnaire some of your data that you actually want to see, your chart of accounts, your posting groups, your vendors, your customers. And then you can see how easily the two can work side by side. So using a pilot implementation, you can see your business within your existing NAV and Business Central at the same time. It sounds like a bit of an overkill, and it seems like, is this going back to the old days of, parallel running and things like that? It's not parallel running. Your NAV system is still running as a production environment. What we're doing is we're taking a snapshot of what you've got in your production environment and presenting it inside Business Central. And the key things for that is where people have got some fear about, what's involved, is it going to look the same? I've got a bit of uncertainty and a bit of doubt about it's going to, work exactly the same as it used to. By going through a pilot program, we can see this, we can show it, we can demonstrate it. You get that comfort feel. Nothing's really changed. It just looks slightly different.
Maturity.
Really, really important point you raise, or you raise a number of really, really important points there, Keith. Firstly, the opportunity to change and improve. rather than just take what you've got and put it into Business Central, you would have had NAV for X many years or decades in some cases. And there are many benefits just moving one to one, but businesses change and grow, times change and go. So it's a good time to stop and cleanse, review, and improve and automate processes. So this transition really creates that, and you would, both Sammy and Keith would see that with every project that you're involved with. And I absolutely love the pilots as well. They've proven to be a really valuable step for customers to see how it works. Past processes without a pilot would involve, you know, workshops and documents, and it would be quite a while before you got to see the product with your data in it and with your key business processes in it. In this process, within weeks, within a few weeks potentially, you're seeing your pilot running with one of your entities, and you get that comfort, and you're playing and hands-on with the product really early on in the project.
Agreed.
Agreed.
I'm sure you guys agree as well. But one question I get asked all the time is, and maybe one for you, Sammy, is what happens to my data from NAV
we delete it. No, it's not true. It's an opportunity to clean up. I mean, it really is. It's an opportunity to clean up your master data. It's an opportunity to clean up your processes, to reset, to analyze your business again, and to reset your business to maybe an out-of-the-box world's best practice. So it's good to do a cleanup. Now, when we bring across your master data into Business Central, an example, before I talked about edit in Excel. What's one of the great tools available to us now to bring your data into BC? I mean, it's become so much straightforward. So many more tools are available. In the old days, we had to write a lot of code to bring it in. Now, almost nothing, a lot less. Excel is our friend. So as the slide had before, we edit in Excel and we can publish that data, and it goes back in straight into Business Central. We bring across, let's say, your opening balances. So balances for customers and vendors, and the words are the same. Everybody understands that. It becomes a great cleanup exercise. If you've, so often I get asked things like, what about my existing transactions, my open sales orders, or my existing purchase orders? All right. And particularly, guys, if they've been half fulfilled or they're still outstanding. Now, they're the ones we have to think about. Absolutely. Typically, if there's a lot of them, we bring them into BC electronically. Will depend on your business. That's the one we do have to talk about. So we master data, opening balances, and any outstanding transactions. But something I do get asked actually is, so if I want to access my old version of NAV or Navision, and I want to see that data still, the old one, what do I do? I suppose a few ideas is, if you've got it installed on a box physically in your business, keep it there. Keep it running. Rock and roll. You've paid for it. You've got it there.
So one of the very nice things about perpetual licenses is that
I agree. Yeah, exactly right. You know, it's I like the subscription model, but this is a great advantage also. Now, and there's other ideas. I suppose we could have a separate SQL database sitting up there on the cloud in Azure, and maybe we can access that via SQL options like SSRS reports or something like that. Or, I mean, I've done this in the past also, is you could have inside Business Central, you could have a new table called old customers or old vendors or something like that. It's not integrated into the core BC, but you'll access it from BC. So they're all ideas we talk about when we do these sorts of activities.
Yeah, and we use quite commonly where we've got the option of a SQL database in Azure or elsewhere. Our customers increasingly just accessing it with Power BI as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a good tool. So that sounds really good. Sounds, you know, relatively smooth. There's always some challenges, but in this case, it has a lot smoother lines, which is excellent. Now, there's obviously always cost considerations though. So Keith, if you wouldn't mind running through those cost considerations for us, that would be great.
Of course. There's no such thing. The expression says there's no such thing as a free lunch, and this isn't any different. What we're seeing now is a real life example of a client that I worked with. and they had an older version of NAV. And in the left-hand column, you can see, right, what their MBL BRL price was, 139,000. With the BREP at 16%, it's 22,000. They're looking at their environment costs over a 4-year period, and this is their servers put in there. A full-time employee to maintain that, keep them live. Typical upgrade cost of going from one version of NAV to another version of NAV was at the time around about $200,000, and that's because they moved from what are potentially moving from NAV 5 up to NAV 2016. So there was a couple of jumps that were involved. I don't know why it's quite costly. It was a huge amount of customizations that they had. So if you looked at the recurring cost there, we've got somewhere in the region of $77,000 and a one-off cost at $245. So that's a brand new server plus the upgrade. Now, if we consider that with a Business Central, with the subscription model, we don't have anything like BREP because it's all built into the pricing. So in your monthly subscription pricing, you've already covered what used to be your BREP constituent, or part of it. You don't have to worry about the environment because software as a service. Microsoft take care of that. You don't have to have a full-time employee to maintain it. Guess what? Microsoft take care of that. That's all built into that price. So what do we have? Same thing, we've still got our broadband. Our data migration is less because there's a lot of, as Sammy said, a lot of out-of-the-box functionality that caters for the previous customizations that were put in. For a like-for-like, we're looking at a lower recurring cost and a very, very small one-off cost. And when we talked about this earlier on, we were talking about you no longer have to go and raise a CapEx to do an upgrade. This is a continual upgrade. It's software as a service. You're getting 2 upgrades a year. So it now becomes an operational expense, something you can plan for going forward, month in, month out, year in, year out. Always be on the latest version. Always have everything there without even having to think, what do I do next? My servers are running out of steam. They're getting towards their expiration date. What do I do? You don't have to worry about that anymore. So, yeah, it does come at a cost, but nowhere near as big a cost as it used to be. So I put that in perspective.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's excellent. I see you've got essentials there.
Yep.
I think you're going to have a chat about the fact there's different and other license types as well.
Yep. So those of you people who have been using NAV from most probably version 4 or 3.7 would have gone through the scenario of having something called modular business.
Modular licensing.
Yeah, licensing. So there you had a menu of modules that you want to select, and you went tick, 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 and you bought a concurrent license, and yeah, that's the way you went. Then Microsoft changed the rules around about 2009 and came out with something called business ready licensing. And the concept there was you got everything you wanted with the exceptions of advanced licensing. With Business Central, it doesn't really change. So with the essentials, you get most probably 80–85% what everybody requires in terms of licensing. There is another version which is called Premium. And Premium is really aimed at those people who have a manufacturing or a service related business. So there is obviously a difference in price between the 2 licenses. Behind that also you no longer have the concept of concurrent licensing. You have named licenses. And going back into the NAV days, you would have concurrent licenses even though you might not have wanted the full functionality of that license. So now you have the option of having a full license, which is called named license, or you have the option of having a team license, which has reduced functionality. So it's what we used to call a light license. So you could have complete read of the system, but limited write capability. So if you wanted to complete a write to the GL, for example, with the team license, you can't do that because you're restricted. So you need to have a full license.
What about like approving workflows? Can a team member do that if they're just an approver?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But if you was a salesperson out on the road, for example, you could get away with having a team license because you could raise a sales quote, but you couldn't turn it into a sales order. So you process it, send it through to an approver. The approver then turns around and says, yeah, I'll turn that into a sales order. It's as simple as that. It's a lot easier.
Customer inquiry and do all that on the road as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So, you know, one of the other benefits of having subscription licenses, although we recommend having an annual subscription, is you can add and subtract users as and when you need to. So if you're a growth business, you don't have to buy all the licenses up front. You add them as you go forward.
Yeah, no, customers have found that very, very handy, particularly at the start of the project.
Absolutely, yeah. Start off with a couple, pilot. Let's run it. Let's go for it. Let's then add more users into the environment.
Thanks, Keith. So we sort of touched on this concept of Business Central being part of. It's obviously part of Dynamics 365, and it's part of the broader Microsoft Cloud, which a couple of us have mentioned a couple of times now. Keith, could you explain what that actually means to our audience, just for those that aren't aware of it, and why it really paves the way, having your finance system, your ERP, within the broader Microsoft Cloud, why that paves the way for additional productivity and innovation and flexibility that's really unique to Microsoft.
Yep. Okay. So there's a slide about to come up. Yeah. So here, this is what Microsoft are terming the one cloud, the true one cloud environment going forward. So as Rebecca said, in the middle we have their Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. So that's our ERP platform, our financial platform, one version of the truth. To the left-hand side, we're running on Microsoft Azure. And on the right-hand side, we have productivity tools such as Microsoft 365, which used to be known as Office 365, but in order to keep the naming convention the same, they call it Microsoft 365, as you would. And then you get the other productivity tools that are coming in there. So at the top, you have what used to be known as CRM Online is now, guess what? The 365 customer engagement. But it gives you the flexibility of having various elements to that customer engagement. So for example, you could have service management, you could have marketing, you could have omni-marketing, you could have, I don't know,
sales.
Grant management, for example, if you wanted. And then at the bottom, we've got the transformation layer that which built into it. So we've heard about Power Automate, we've heard about Power BI, we've heard about Power Flow. All these things are available to you and accessible as being completely integrated into that one cloud technology, that one environment. So there is no other ERP system out there that gives you that capability, which when you come back to that first, you asked me why change from NAV to BC, it gives you that flexibility. This is the last system you're ever going to buy because everything is going to move forward with you. You're always going to be on the correct version at the right point in time.
Yep, and you're going to be aligned to the rest of your organization as well.
Absolutely.
To what marketing's doing, to what sales doing, to all of that. And look, I couldn't agree more. It's my most favorite things about Business Central. Look, it's a great ERP and it's been delivering great solutions for 30 odd years. But my favorite thing is that it sits in this broader Microsoft Cloud. All the security and AI and machine learning and productivity and all the other Dynamics 365 apps and Microsoft 365, and the Power Platform is really exciting. So this is what makes Business Central really unique compared to comparable products out there. Now we're coming right up to time, as usual. 3 people that like to talk a lot together in one webinar. So Keith, what are the next steps?
Okay, so next steps. Register for a free 2-hour appraisal. Now, that free 2-hour appraisal will be either by Sammy or myself or one of the other NAV consultants you see in our Business Central team. And let's look at what the options are for you going forward to move from your existing NAV environment, and let's see where that leads to. We can help you set up a free 30-day trial with Business Central, and we can guide you through that. So later on, you'll get after the webinar is finished, you'll get an email which will allow you to register your interest in having a 2-hour appraisal. And followed by that, to those people who re-register, there is a white paper on why to upgrade. So it covers things like, and these are intangible things inside that white paper, such as how do you attract new people to your organization if you're running old technology and old ERP. People want to join an organization that has a vision for the future and is building itself on and using technology to achieve the goals of the business.
Yeah, people that have expectations that what they use on their phones, everything else is just as easy and intuitive. Cool. All right. Thanks for that, Keith. So now we've got a couple of minutes left. So there is a few questions, but what I might do is I might ask, and either of you jump in. So can I get Business Central on premise, and do you get the same functionality if you have it on premise?
Well, the simple answer is yes, you can have it on premise.
Okay.
Because there are organizations out there which are, let's say, government style organizations which will restrict the use of having Business Central in the cloud. So we have to be cognizant of that fact. Is there any reduction in functionality? Well, yes, there is, because some of the things that we were talking about, access to Flow, to Power Apps, to the greater version of Power BI, you're not going to get that. But more importantly, the thing you're not going to get is you're not going to get your automatic updates twice a year. You're not going to get the incidental releases that come out throughout the year to give you that additional functionality. And you've actually moved back in time because you're going to have capital expense to replace your servers, et cetera, all the things that we've talked about to said, by going to the cloud, you don't have to worry about those anymore.
And you're not part of that sort of Microsoft Cloud platform as well. Now, we do get that there are organizations in the world in a situation where they've got low internet or poor internet. So there is a case for it, but ideally, if those situations don't exist, then cloud should be the first priority.
Yeah, and we're seeing it less and less, aren't we, this low internet thing?
Yeah.
I think it's less.
All right, well, we're bang up on time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the webinar now formally. We're going to stop the recording. And anyone that's on the audience today that would like to hang around and sort of what I call hang out with Keith, Sammy and I can get Keith and Sammy to answer any of your questions in more of an interactive question and answer way. So, but anyone else, please drop off and you'll get the follow-up emails from us. And thank you very much, Sammy and Keith, and thank you very much for everyone taking your time out today and joining us.